They banned renters, until the whole town moved in. It started quietly, as these things often do. A few notices slipped under doors, a few whispered meetings at the clubhouse, and before anyone realized what was happening, the HOA board had pushed through a new rule that would change everything. No renters allowed. Those 3 words sent a ripple of confusion through the entire neighborhood of Willow Creek. For years, Willow Creek had been a mixed community: families, retirees, young couples, and even a few students who rented small homes while saving for their own. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm. The kind of place where people shared garden tools, watched each other's kids, and waved from driveways. But under the surface, a small but powerful group on the HOA board had grown tired of what they called temporary people. They wanted exclusivity, a tighter grip, and a higher property value, no matter who it hurt. The board claimed the rule was about preserving community integrity, but everyone knew the truth. They didn't want outsiders: the teachers, nurses, delivery drivers, and small business employees who made the neighborhood work. The decision passed with a secret vote during a weekday meeting few could attend. By the time residents realized, the letters had already gone out. Renters were given 60 days to leave. The reaction was immediate. Some packed up quietly, too afraid or tired to fight. Others pleaded with the HOA for exceptions: single parents, elderly couples, people who had lived there for years. But the board was unmoved. They hid behind legal terms and technicalities, brushing off emotions with cold professionalism. The first eviction notice went to the Johnsons, a young couple with 2 children, renting a small 2-bedroom house near the playground. Their kids played every afternoon with the HOA president's grandchildren, but that didn't stop the letter from arriving on their doorstep. The community watched as the family packed their belongings, the sound of moving boxes echoing across driveways. That moment changed everything. It wasn't just about renters anymore. It was about fairness, about power, about what kind of neighborhood Willow Creek was becoming. The whispers turned into meetings. Quiet frustration grew into anger. A group of long-term residents began gathering at night, away from HOA surveillance cameras, in garages and basements. They weren't activists or lawyers, just people who had had enough. They called themselves the Creek Collective. It started with 8 people. Within a week, there were 30. Within 2, over 100. Their plan wasn't just to complain, it was to fight back. The group discovered that several of the HOA's actions violated state housing laws. The rule banning renters hadn't been properly recorded, and the board had skipped crucial steps in the approval process. But legal battles would take months, maybe years. By then, dozens of families would be gone. So they decided on something bolder. Something that couldn't be ignored. Their strategy was simple: if the HOA wanted to ban renters, they would flood the neighborhood with them. Not secretly, not quietly, but publicly and all at once. The plan was called Move-In Day. They began spreading the word. Flyers appeared in coffee shops, local stores, and online forums. Friends, co-workers, and relatives of Willow Creek residents were invited. Anyone looking for a place to live, anyone tired of unfair treatment elsewhere, they were welcome. The group arranged for dozens of vacant homes to be rented or loaned under legal loopholes. Homeowners sympathetic to the cause listed their properties at low prices, some even offering short-term contracts or family co-living arrangements. The movement grew faster than anyone imagined. Local news stations caught wind of it, intrigued by the idea of a small-town community standing up to an oppressive HOA. Residents who had never spoken to each other before suddenly found themselves working side by side, cleaning homes, painting fences, preparing for the big day. The atmosphere buzzed with energy and quiet rebellion. Behind closed doors, the HOA board panicked. They sent warning emails, called emergency meetings, and even tried to intimidate some of the leading members of the Creek Collective. But it was too late. The plan was already in motion. Move-In Day arrived on a sunny Saturday morning. Dozens of cars and moving trucks lined the streets. New families arrived: teachers, nurses, veterans, students, all welcomed with open arms by neighbors wearing matching shirts that read "Welcome Home." It wasn't chaos, it was organized, determined, and peaceful. By noon, the once quiet community was alive with the sound of laughter, children playing, and boxes being carried into freshly opened homes. Reporters filmed every moment, capturing a neighborhood taking its power back. The HOA president, red-faced and furious, tried to stop it. He called security, threatened fines, and even summoned local police. But when officers arrived, they found nothing illegal. Every new tenant had paperwork showing temporary co-ownership agreements or family occupancy clauses, perfectly within the law. As the day went on, the tension grew. The HOA board locked themselves in their office, calling lawyers, demanding intervention. But all they could do was watch as the community they thought they controlled transformed before their eyes. By evening, every empty home in Willow Creek had lights on. The streets that had felt cold and divided now pulsed with music, laughter, and connection. The renters they had tried to exclude were now part of the very fabric they had hoped to tear apart. But the fight wasn't over. The board wasn't ready to give up. They were furious, humiliated, and desperate to regain control. In the days that followed, they launched a counterattack: legal threats, new fines, and attempts to void leases. What they didn't realize was that the whole town was now watching, and so was the press. And as the sun set on that first night of move-in day, the people of Willow Creek knew this was just the beginning. They had won the first battle, but the war for their neighborhood had only just begun. The days following move-in day were unlike anything Willow Creek had ever seen. The once quiet, rule-bound neighborhood had transformed into a living symbol of defiance. News vans rolled through the streets, journalists interviewed families on porches, and camera crews captured scenes of unity and resilience that spread far beyond the town's borders. But behind closed doors, the HOA board was plotting revenge. The president of the board, Gerald Brooks, had built his reputation on control. For years, he had dictated every decision, from lawn heights to mailbox colors. He saw the HOA as his personal kingdom, and this rebellion as an unforgivable insult. The more the community celebrated, the angrier he became. The board's first move was intimidation. Letters began arriving in mailboxes again, thick, official-looking envelopes stamped with the HOA logo. They accused residents of violations ranging from unauthorized occupancy to unapproved exterior modifications. Anyone who had participated in move-in day found themselves targeted. Some were fined hundreds of dollars for things as petty as hanging welcome banners or having too many cars parked in their driveways. But this time, the community didn't back down. Instead of fear, the letters fueled determination. The Creek Collective, now larger than ever, began organizing public meetings, not secret ones, but open gatherings in the park. Hundreds of people showed up, bringing folding chairs, snacks, and signs that read, "We are Willow Creek." Lawyers volunteered their services pro bono, local officials began attending, and a movement that had started as quiet frustration now had the attention of the entire county. The HOA tried to silence the meetings, claiming the park was private property and required permits. But when they sent a private security team to disperse the crowd, the officers were met with cameras, reporters, and chants from the residents. The images went viral: a small-town HOA trying to shut down peaceful neighbors fighting for their homes. Public sympathy flooded in from across the state. Pressure mounted on the HOA board. City officials launched an investigation into the legality of their renter ban and their handling of funds. It turned out that the board had been misusing HOA money for years, paying for personal expenses, luxury dinners, and even vacations labeled as board retreats. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Suddenly, the board that had prided itself on community integrity was exposed as corrupt and self-serving. Local news outlets ran headlines calling it the Willow Creek scandal. Residents who had once stayed quiet now spoke out, sharing stories of mistreatment and unfair fines. The collective compiled everything into a detailed report and handed it to investigators. The turning point came at the next HOA meeting, one that Gerald Brooks insisted would be closed to the public. But word got out, and by the time the meeting began, hundreds of residents surrounded the clubhouse. Cameras rolled as chants echoed, "No more lies. No more fines." Inside, the board tried to maintain order, but the noise outside was deafening. One by one, board members began resigning, unable to face the crowd or the mounting legal threats. Only Gerald remained, sweating under the fluorescent lights, clinging to his chair as if it were a throne. When officials entered the room to serve him with legal documents related to financial misconduct, the once feared HOA president realized his reign was over. The crowd outside erupted in cheers as word spread that the board had fallen. It wasn't just a victory, it was liberation. In the following weeks, the residents of Willow Creek took back control of their community. They held open elections for a new board, this time built on transparency and inclusion. Renters were given full community rights, and the new HOA charter specifically banned discrimination of any kind. Homes that had been empty for months filled with families again. The streets buzzed with life, children playing, neighbors talking, people helping each other repair fences and plant gardens. But the most symbolic moment came a month later, when the community held a festival in the same park the old board had tried to shut down. They called it Home for All Day. Booths lined the paths, local musicians played, and banners hung from trees celebrating unity. At the festival center stood a long wooden table covered with the original HOA documents, the outdated rules that had once divided them. One by one, residents signed a new charter that started with 6 simple words: every neighbor deserves a place here. The story of Willow Creek spread far beyond the town. Other neighborhoods, inspired by what they had done, began standing up to unfair HOAs across the country. Online, people called it the renters' revolution. And though the neighborhood would face new challenges in the years to come, one thing had changed forever. The people had learned that true community isn't built on control, exclusion, or fear. It's built on unity, compassion, and the courage to stand together when it matters most. Willow Creek was no longer just a neighborhood. It was a symbol, proof that even in the face of greed and power, ordinary people could rise up, fight back, and reclaim the place they called home.